Welcome, my dear ones. This is Tracy Anderson Askew, your host for the Transform Your Birth podcast, changing your mind about birth one story at a time. Each week, we'll be exploring a birth story through the lens of what birth can teach us. I'll be digging deep into each story so you can learn what it is that can change the way a birth unfolds. We can't control birth, but we can influence it. So listen in to find out how. Enjoy. Today's episode is with Jessica, having her first birth with the support of 2 stepchildren and her partner. We explore how knowing too much about birth can find its way into our labour room and how much information is enough. Jess shares with us her journey of managing a long labour and a long second stage. We reflect on how time can inhibit our ability to flow with the birth and the influence of vaginal examinations. Jess shares some powerful reflections and gives some great advice at the end. A very inspirational story. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you again or hear you again. Today we've got the lovely Jess for the Transform Your Birth podcast. And Jess has 2 beautiful stepchildren who are a little bit older. They are 11 and 9. And she's got a 4-week-old little boy called Adam. Welcome, Jess. Thanks for coming.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, Jess, how were you feeling about being pregnant with little Adam, and what sort of preparation did you do?
Well, I'm a self-diagnosed over-preparer. So I did a lot, but not all of it was kind of necessary for everyone. I personally felt like it was good to kind of get through some of that mental battle, like feel like I was mentally prepared. But I definitely overthought everything and over-prepared everything. I did a lot of reading and a lot of physical work and stuff. I obviously went to the Transform Your Birth course, and that was wonderful as well. But so went to the gym every day, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of podcasts. I did a dear friend of mine gave me a whole list of books and podcasts to consume during my pregnancy from very early on. So I listened to The Great Birth Rebellion and Evidence-Based Birth. And I found that they were really quite good at dispelling some myths that I kind of maybe already had imposed on me about the medical system and what birth should and shouldn't look like.
Yeah.
So that was really good.
So did you find that sort of information and preparation helped to alleviate any sort of fears or worries that you had, or did it create some? Like, how did that process unfold for you in your thinking around birth?
I think it was the opposite. Rather than creating fears, but there were a few things that I was like, oh, you can do all this preparation and then like the baby can have other plans, and if he has a meconium poo, then a certain thing has to happen after that. And so I came to discover some knowledge through that. But I definitely found more so the knowledge was power more than anything else. Yeah.
And it is power. It's the right knowledge though too, isn't it? Because you can get overburdened by a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So as you were pregnant then, what were sort of the changes that you noticed in yourself as you were doing this preparation and getting closer to birth?
Changes. I was very focused, I think. Yeah, I definitely found that like the focus away from work and towards the family was quite stark, especially as I got closer to my start of my mat leave. I was like, I'm definitely ready to just focus on this huge event that's about to happen in my life. And, the arrival of this little guy into our family unit, there was a lot of conversations that needed to happen. And there was a lot of just like stuff to buy, and the whole transition. Yeah, yeah. And personally as well, kind of, the mental like shift, I think, was very much present.
It's a big journey, isn't it? And what can be surprising as people go through their pregnancy is that perhaps, they were very into their career and loved their work and very ambition oriented. And then all of a sudden your care factor drops and you do shift your priorities and your focus, particularly towards the end of pregnancy. I call it the nesting period is a little bit like a caterpillar going into its cocoon. It's like, just leave me alone, go away. I just want to get ready to birth this baby. And there's a deeper part of you that knows that something really big is about to emerge. And your whole internal system and orientation does shift and change. Is that what you found?
Definitely. Yeah. It's the term that I came across was matrescence, and I definitely felt that that shift into, I'm already a mother to two kids full time. But yeah, I felt work was very much less important, and it will become more important as the bills stack up and whatever. I'll get back into work, and but yeah, there was that shift. Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. And of the things you did to prepare, what were the things that made the biggest difference, that started to help you to see things differently?
I think probably that like what kind of made the most difference during birth.
Yeah.
Maybe, or I think it was probably being informed, and just like knowing what I wanted out of my birth experience.
Yeah.
And bringing this little guy into the world. All the choices that might come up.
Yeah, that's an important thing. We talk about doing some birth mapping or birth preferences sheets, which is really there to help us to get clear about what's important to us in this process, and to use that as a communication tool or device to give to our carers, because they work with a huge array of people, all coming from different perspectives around birth. And it's a great way, once you get clear on what it is that's important to you and you're able to communicate that, well, that then sets the stage for really good teamwork.
Yeah.
Good. So tell us about the day. How did it unfold?
It was a day. Yeah, it was a full day's work. So I actually started around 5 a.m. The previous day.
Yep.
Very, very mild contractions. I wasn't even sure if that was sort of the real thing. And my husband and I both pretty relaxed about it. It was sort of like, oh, it could die down. Even if it is labor, it could die down. Could still be days or whatever. So just went about the normal routine. And then, sort of went to the gym and took the dog for a walk and went to my midwife's appointment. She was like, I think you are in labor. You definitely look like you're contracting. At this stage, I was like, okay, like this is definitely it. I just didn't know how long it would be. And so she was like, okay, drive home safe. So I got home, and so from 5 a.m. till like maybe 5 p.m. was really kind of early labor, but 5 p.m. was like, I was definitely in maybe active early labor. I can't remember what the terms are now.
Yeah.
But so at home, trying to kind of stay active and do the strategies that I had this whole birth sheet that I barely used in the end. But yeah, sort of tried the bath, tried the shower and the TENS machine, and my husband was amazing. He would like be there to offer me water or any snacks that I thought I'd eat so many snacks. Like I thought I was going to run a marathon kind of thing, but it wasn't like that at all. I just didn't have any appetite.
Yeah.
The kids came in and gave me kisses and cuddles. It was really lovely to have them sort of a part of that in a small way. I was a little bit worried that I would kind of need the kind of private, unobserved like space, just, the less people, the better type thing. And we talked a lot about how we could include the kids, the older kids. And, this is birth, this is a part of life. And yeah, so on the one hand, I really wanted that as well. And yeah, they were lovely, and it was wonderful to get their little kisses and cuddles and that support there. And I was glad we could really involve them in that part while we were here. So yeah, obviously things kind of ramped up as time went on, as the evening kind of wore on, and I wasn't getting too much relief from anything, which is good because, as contractions, like as you get closer to the end, the contractions should get closer together. So I was trying to keep that as in my mind as kind of a good thing, we're progressing, and
yeah, good
soon I'll
mindset.
be able, yeah, soon I'll be able to go to the hospital, and then it'll be, the next stage in this journey of birth.
How did you know when it was time to go to the hospital?
Um, I really wanted to wait as long as I possibly could. Just hearing from a lot of my readings that kind of the earlier you go in, the more likely you are to face an intervention that you probably don't want. And I was keen to labor at home and try and be active. You can do that in hospital, of course, but how did I know? We called the midwife once, and she said, yep, try a couple more things and wait another hour or so on. My husband had told her how far apart the contractions were and whatever. He was in control of that. I was trying not to think too much about timings and how long it had been and so on. And then around 11 p.m., I was like vocalizing more. So it had kind of increased that little bit more. And Steve was on the phone to the midwife again, and I said, I don't know if I can get to the hospital.
Yeah,
I don't
there
know
it
if I
is.
can get into the car. And she's like,
That's the signal. It's I always say to people, go when you don't think you can do the car
oh
trip.
yeah, yeah. Maybe
Yeah,
I'd heard that somewhere. So maybe I
yeah,
was
right.
like in my subconsciously, I was like, I really want to go, but I don't think I can
Yeah, that's a
say the
good
thing.
sign. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so she was like, all right, come in. So yeah, so the car ride was interesting, contracting in the car, and then
How did you manage that? What did you do? Can you remember in the car to manage that transition? How did you
yeah,
maintain
look,
your labour land?
we just took it really slowly. Yeah, actually, that was another thing. I didn't want to kind of be thrust into like this different environment where I'd been like laboring so beautifully at home, perhaps,
Yeah,
maybe, hopefully. And then yeah, straight into the emergency room. So I I think on my birth preparation sheet that I didn't really use, I kind of thought that I would have like earplugs and like sunglasses or an eye mask or something like that
yeah,
to kind of block out the whole world. But none of that really happened. I think I just went really internal and just really focused on, I don't know, my trying to position myself in such a way that when the contraction came, I was ready to deal with it. And yeah, I just kind of shuffled around in my seat a few times and moaned and groaned, and then we were there. But I think it was more internal. I just kind of blocked it all out. And then we were in the birth suite before too long. I had a couple of contractions walking up there. But yeah, we just we really took our time, and I had Steve to kind of like latch on to whenever. I think I had a pretty big contraction, like leaning over the couch, which is right outside the birth suite at the birth center, and going back for a midwife's appointment in the following days, I looked at that couch. I was like, oh wow, I remember that. That was a big one, yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so just I think just yeah, focusing and having Steve to kind of hang on to during the contractions really
Do you
helped
remember
me.
what you were doing with your mind, Jess?
In those early,
any stage of the labour, how were you using your mind? Were you thinking about things? Were you saying things to yourself, creating words or images? What sort of strategies did you use, or did you just go?
Yes. So with my mind, I think during the early stages, I maybe was thinking a lot about how long the contractions were taking and how far apart they were and so on, when we could go into hospital and that sort of thing. And then, and also like, what else could I use in terms of a strategy? Because I knew I didn't want pain relief. I knew I wanted to try and do it by myself. And I think I was trying to tell myself, like, be curious about it and like don't put too much pressure on it. But this may be we have two beautiful children, and I think we're going to stop here. So this may be your only shot at bringing this little baby into the world naturally, or sort of without pain relief. And I was curious about how it would all go down and without putting any pressure on it. So I was like, stay curious, don't put too much pressure on it. But yeah, equally, I was like, what else can I use out of my kind of birth preferences sheet? Can I tried the TENS machine and positioning and heat packs and all sorts of different things. So I was kind of thinking about those sorts of things and how I could reposition in that. Once we got to the hospital, and I was in the bath, for maybe like 3 hours or so until I started feeling like involuntarily pushing. And that's kind of when that shift happened around 3:30.
Mm-hmm.
And my midwife checked me, but I opted not to have vaginal examinations. But she checked to sort of make sure that I was pushing effectively. And I was, so that was all fine. And so that kind of gave me a real boost. I was like, yes, we're doing the right thing and we're in the pushing phase. So, it could be really soon. And I think that thought from then on, like I'm in the pushing phase and I'm pushing effectively, he could be just around the corner. And, his head could appear on the next like check. She was checking with a mirror and a torch to see if she could see a head after that. And so I just kept thinking that. And yeah, that was a main, like, maybe my mental strategy that I used during that phase. But equally, every time she checked after that, especially after, I had a prolonged pushing phase. It was about 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, every time she did check and didn't say anything, I knew that there was no head. So I had to really go back into myself and be like, it's okay. That doesn't mean he's not going to appear on the next one or in the next 5 minutes or in the next 2 minutes. And I definitely remember like from the bath kind of looking up and seeing the birth center bed in the room and thinking I could be in that bed with my little one in the next 20 minutes. And
that's a nice vision.
Yes, it really was. Like, it was really nice. And just to know that this thing was not forever. And soon I could just meet him and then I could rest. So that was an important strategy, I think, for me that really kept me going.
Yeah.
Especially through a long pushing phase.
Well, it's not unusual for first-time mothers to take at least 2 hours to push the baby out. They start to get edgy after a couple of hours.
Yes, they
But,
did.
so yeah, and you probably felt and sensed that because the midwife, through the policies of
Yeah,
hospital has to then start to do things, and that can
yeah.
put pressure on the mother.
It did
Yeah,
actually. It did
interesting.
put it didn't like, it's my midwife was wonderful and I think she handled it really well, but there was a policy which I found out later, and we did
Yeah.
have to progress a little bit towards that direction, which was like a little bit of a worry for me. But yeah, equally I was feeling like, oh, it's been a long time. Maybe I should get out of the bath and try something else. So I did actually ask for a VE at this stage when it had been about 2 hours, because maybe it was about an hour in. It was about an hour after I'd started pushing. Um, and I said, can we just make sure that I am fully dilated? Don't tell me if I'm not, or don't tell me how far dilated I am, but just make sure that I'm not kind of pushing against cervix and doing some damage. So she checked and I was. And then I said, then I can't remember if I was like, I'm just not going back in the bath. Let's try something else. And so we did some upright positions for about an hour, like shower and toilet, and then kind of on the bed, which was on an incline, on my knees, but like supported with my hands on the bed, kind of facing backwards, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was about an hour of all of that, and still no sign of a head. And yeah, at that stage, it had been that two and a half, maybe 2 hours mark. And so yeah, the midwife started having the conversation of like, hey, you've been pushing for a long time. You're going to get tired. We sort of might need to start having the conversation about how we can help you. And she talked about the options being vacuum, forceps, which would involve a spinal, or a Caesar. And a spinal sounded pretty good at that stage, even though I knew I didn't want it.
Yeah.
I still felt like I had a little bit more in me, a little bit more, So I said, how is he? Firstly, like, is he okay? Because he wasn't on CTG or any monitoring. She was doing intermittent auscultation, and his heart rate was fine. She said he was doing well, and she said, we're a little bit worried about your blood pressure, but it's like, well, I'm in labor. I'm a bit stressed. Maybe that's probably why. So that was expected. But yeah, so I said, let's wait a couple more contractions, and she put a cannula in and took some bloods for in case we had to go to theatre in a hurry. And then still nothing, and then we got into the wheelchair, and I had a contraction in the wheelchair, and then we got onto the transferred into the birth suite in order to get a consult with the doctor or the anaesthetist. And when we arrived, I found out, she said that the doctor and the anaesthetist were caught in another cesarean section. So it would be about 25 minutes before anyone would come and anything would happen.
Well, there's good incentive.
Yeah, so I don't know if like something shifted right then, if I was like, right, we've got 25 minutes, little boy, so let's get this thing done. Or if it was like, or if it was simply, a different position in the wheelchair or what. But a couple of contractions later, and I definitely felt like, I finally felt like something was different, and I felt like he had descended. And I don't know if I like couldn't vocalize that I felt him, or I was worried that I was imagining it or what. But then all of a sudden they were like, oh, I can see your head. Quick, get me the gloves and let's go. because they finally saw him, and yeah, frowned for a couple of contractions, and then he was out after a couple more contractions.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting, isn't it? It's, we have these arbitrary 2 hours to push out a baby, and whether that's realistic or not, nobody really knows, but it's kind of like your carers draw a line in the sand. And that line in the sand itself can create the pressure, which is sort of not really in alignment with the mother just relaxing and letting go and just following her body. It was really interesting, Jess, you talked about you're worrying about the cervix being in the way and not necessarily just trusting your body. Where did that thought or belief come from?
I don't know. It's probably I didn't do that much like they talk about in one of the books I read, pushing practice and that sort of thing. So maybe I saw it somewhere that it's possible that you can do damage to the pelvic floor muscles and tissues and whatever when you are pushing, especially for a long time. So I think I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. It's interesting
that I
how
wasn't pushing too early.
Yeah, and it's interesting how different pieces of information that we get can find their way into our labour room, that our minds hook onto that and go, oh, I'm going to have to be careful of that, and can get in the way of you just really being able to let go and let your body do what it generally knows how to do, because a cervix, being inflamed like that's typically comes when babies are a bit malpositioned. They're pushing against one part of the cervix more, and it can cause it to, just start to get a little bit inflamed and get in the way. But there's also another school of thought is that if the mother's feeling the urge to push, that it will get out of the way anyway. So it's a bit tricky to know how to manage those sort of phases of birth. And of course, the more we get in there and have a look and check doing vaginal examinations, once again, the more we're getting information that may or may not serve us. So this is a really interesting thing you've brought up, and it's the part, it highlights how tricky it can get for mothers when we know too much, when we try to midwife ourselves or have these things in our mind that can actually play out on the day in how we're responding to, say, in this case, second stage.
Yeah, I was at great risk of overthinking and midwifing myself. I'm not a midwife, but yeah, I was definitely at risk of doing that. Especially, which is kind of why I was sort of like, I really don't want to know how long it's been. I don't want to know how far I've progressed in terms of dilation. Like that will just
really wild.
That'll just play mind tricks on me, I feel like. And even when she did check, she did do that one VE and said, yep, you're fully dilated. I was like, this is great. I've been
Thank
pushing.
God.
So I was glad. But because I did say, like, don't tell me either way, but she was like, you're fine. She didn't say you're fully dilated. I should say, she said, you're fine. You can keep pushing. Okay. But what she didn't tell me at that stage, she told me later, was that he was still quite high.
Yeah.
And this was after 2 hours. So I think that's why she was like, it's taking a long time. Let's look at progressing things. But yeah, if she told me that, I don't know, I would have just been like, okay, where's where's the anaesthetist? I think it's time. It's been a long time.
Exactly.
I am getting pretty tired, but it would have been very psychological if she did that. It would have really, I think, changed things.
And that's such a great story. Thank you for pulling that out, because that's why we can get in the way of women just being able to surrender. Your midwife is wise enough not to give you that information. Now, for her as a midwife, she has to keep an eye on, this baby's high. Is there a reason it's high? and keep an eye on how the labour progresses and the types of contractions you have, and to listen to your pushing. And she's got all the skills and wisdom to do all of that. But your job is to just go with what your body's telling you to do.
Yeah. And I'm so glad I did. I really am.
Exactly. And isn't it interesting where your midwife did what she was supposed to do, which was to get some extra support with a doctor and an anaesthetist. And had they have been there, they might have ended up doing something like a forceps or a vacuum delivery for your little one. But given the time and the space, you're actually able to do it yourself. So that was quite fortunate, really, wasn't it?
Just in time.
Yeah, just in time. But and look, in defence of your carers, they've got to manage risk. That's their job.
Yeah, she did say it was possible that he was in a bad position, and that could very well have been true. And the fact that we transferred and I was sitting in a wheelchair, I think I had my leg up potentially, you know. I was trying different positions, but maybe just that extra asymmetrical position might have just
repositioned him.
Yeah, who knows?
We'll
no regrets,
never know.
honestly. Even the transfer to birth suite, like it was all just meant to be. It was
exactly. And that's what a good midwife will do, actually. If a woman's been pushing for a while and there doesn't seem to be, that the baby doesn't seem to be coming down, they will try different positions and get you to do different things with your legs in order to help reposition a little head. But there is pressure on our carers to be managing birth, and so after certain time periods they've got to do that. And bring in some extra reinforcements or help if you need it. So what was it like when you met little Adam? What was that like, that moment?
It was completely shattering. Like it was just like I don't want to I don't know, I don't want to like go overboard. I know that some women don't have that immediate kind of like earth-shattering, heart-piercing moment. For whatever reason, you know, their delivery may have been disrupted by interventions, or like drugs can interfere with the hormones. But for me it was a huge relief. And I was just like, I was so proud of us. I think the first thing I said to him was like, we did it, little boy. I was just like, I was so overwhelmed and I was just crying. I was so happy.
And what was that like for your partner?
Steve's, he's cool as a cucumber. Steve is very sort of stoic. But I looked over at him and he just, his look just melted me. It was just a look, but it was perfect. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you have any issues with the placenta or your perineum?
They needed to do active third stage, which is rather than birthing the placenta sort of naturally, I had to get the syntocinon. And the reason for that is the prolonged second stage and maternal exhaustion and the uterus contracting for so long. The concern is that it won't be able to push down. But that was fine. That wasn't a huge deal in my preferences. So that there was no issues there. And in terms of my perineum, that was a big, big concern for me. I'm sure it would be for lots of people. But I didn't have a tear. Thank God. And I think it was potentially a few things. I did some work beforehand to I did perineal massage, and I did a bit of reading about what to do during kind of crowning and what I've heard become known as the ring of fire when the baby's really crowning. You kind of change the way you're pushing, and my midwife was awesome. She reminded me exactly of what to do, because prior to that the bearing down is really quite strong. But once I felt that ring of fire, she was like, okay, so just sort of small, like almost like grunting pushes now. So I did that, and uh, yeah, just not, I would have loved to have just been like push and like get him out as quickly as possible. But yeah, I think those small little more gentle pushes
Yeah.
definitely helped save my perineum.
Yeah. Last week's episode with Ashley was the same story. She told exactly the same story.
Yeah,
That
wow.
they just gave, when she was feeling that urge to push, she, as she was stretching more, she
Yes.
was able to the midwife guided her to just, breathe gently in
Yeah.
that space, pant a little bit rather than really push and bear down.
Yeah, the
Really,
panting.
yeah, which gives the body time to open. So we're not trying to push the baby out too quickly. And
Yeah,
that
that
just,
time to stretch. Yeah, that's
yeah,
exactly right. Yeah.
exactly. And that flies so much in the face of what we see on TV with everybody yelling, push, push,
I know.
push. And that's the exact opposite. You don't want to do that at all. You want to just listen to your body, feel that urge to bear down, and just give yourself the space to just relax in between those contractions and give the body time to stretch and open. Oh, that's a wonderful outcome. What
Yeah.
did you learn about yourself, Jess?
Um, I think I learned that I am I was confident about birth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then being in labor, I was challenged, but I realized that I was stronger than I thought I was. It's not like running a marathon. Perhaps it's like running a marathon, but for like 24 hours and
Yeah.
every single muscle in your body is in use. But yeah, I learned that I'm capable and I'm ready to be his mum. And
Mm.
I've earned it kind of thing.
Yeah. And do you think that's flowed into motherhood?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think the way we met and the way he came into the world, had an impact on our flow afterwards. It was all our first moments were like really beautiful, and he latched on um, after after the first 10 minutes or so, and so all the breastfeeding has been like quite uncomplicated. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously lots of challenges and lots
Yeah,
of
yeah.
drizzles, but yeah, everything's been really lovely.
That's beautiful. And I think, when we can support women to birth in a way that's physiological, that maximizes and optimizes their hormonal cocktail and create the right conditions around them to stay in that beautiful, deep state of labor land where we're not overthinking, we're not too stimulated by our environment, we go internal and inward, then we're learning to work with the birth, not against it. And creating those conditions is very, very important. What advice, Jess, would you give a pregnant woman?
Um, I would probably I would probably start by if she asked.
Yeah, good
Um,
good point.
I would start with the advice that my midwife friend Carly gave me, and that's to go carefully with choosing your model of care. Don't
Yeah.
kind of automatically defer to what you think you might go with. For example, um, a private obstetrician, like if you're uncomplicated and you would like to have a vaginal birth with kind of lower risk of instrumental and things like that, then um, evidence does show that midwife-led care is the way to go. Like OBs are experts at more complicated
Mm.
care. But yeah, if you're healthy and low risk, then you'll have a beautiful experience with midwife led. Um, I would definitely say consider not asking for vaginal examinations because that would have had a huge impact on my mindset. throughout my labor. It's very intrusive. The one that I did have that I asked for was like not that comfortable. You're interrupted, like you can't be in any position, you can't be in the bath, you have to lay on your back in the bed. And then the information, equally as we've already talked about, can be a bit damaging to your mindset and your flow, and that labor land can really bring you out of that. So I would say consider not asking for that. And yeah, just inform yourself again. Like I've already talked about it, but yeah, I found that information is really powerful, and you sort of don't have to need to go overboard. There are lots of really great resources out there that have all the research and stuff broken down for you. You don't need to read whole journal articles and whatever. But yeah, I would probably also just say don't push too quickly when you feel the ring of fire. Yeah, your perineum will thank you.
Yeah, give it time to open and to stretch. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Jess, for sharing such a beautiful, inspirational story, helping us to understand the power of physiological birth when birth does go through uninterrupted, and where women are really well supported to be able to stay in that zone and work with their labours, whatever unfolds. Has a great deal to offer, the mother and the baby, and not just through the birth experience, but the flow on into parenting as well, which you highlighted as well. So thank you so much, and thanks everyone for listening, and we'll come to you again next week. Take care and have a good week. Bye-bye. Thanks, Jess. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support and grow into your role as a parent. Our Transform Your Birth course, both in Canberra and online, is waiting for you to feel calmer and more confident to give birth and change the way you labour. Or why not watch our free masterclass on Keeping Relaxed and Excited About Birth, where we discuss the 3 most important things that can change a birth. You'll find us at our website on www.transformparenting.com.au.